Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Got Mental Health Podcast. I am your co-host, Rachel Cove. I'm the owner of Transformational Solutions, a life coaching business that specializes in addiction, trauma, and self-destructive behaviors. I'm an author, podcast host, group facilitator, speaker, and co-creator of the online 8-week self-development course, The Visions Program.
I'm your co-host, Arthur Mogilevski, a business entrepreneur, dad, animal activist, and owner of AM Healthcare, California's leading dual diagnosis and mental health treatment centers, focusing on comprehensive and immersive treatment experiences with a network of facilities and dedicated professionals committed to providing each and every client the intimacy of care they so richly deserve.
This is the Got Mental Health Podcast, a fun, open, and safe space where we talk to experts, thought leaders, and professionals in the mental health field.
Our goal is to educate, inspire, and empower people to take care of their mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
Join us weekly to hear Arthur talk like this as we talk all things mental health.
Follow us wherever you go to get your podcasts.
And don't forget to rate and review as it really supports our show.
Thanks, guys.
And keep listening to Arthur. I remember so much of what you say to me, and I implement it in my life daily. I hope you know that. So you've made an impact on me.
I appreciate that.
So
Absolutely.
I appreciate you a lot. And I really want to ask you a million questions just about your journey and how you've landed in the position that you are in currently. You're an entrepreneur, you're a father, you're a husband, you own how many businesses?
7.
7? Holy shit. Yeah, even our cameraman in the background is like, holy shit. It's impressive.
I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So you're going to be humble about it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of when you're in the moment, it's which is very humbling because sometimes you got to take a step back and just realize where you're at in life. Because when you're in that constant drive, you lose sight of the overall picture of what's happening. And so I like to take sometimes some deep breaths. And they usually come when I'm kind of by myself and just reflecting on things. So yeah, no, it's very exciting stuff. So.
How long did it take you to land in this place of success?
Well, I want to kind of underline that I appreciate the words of success and whatnot. For me, it's not about necessarily success or not success. It's about having fun in what I'm doing and enjoying where I'm at. I think that's the number one piece of all of this is, to be just happy and enjoy coming to work and being a part of a community and doing the things that I love to do. I think that for me, that's what success is. It's not necessarily just driven by a financial matter or, possessions. It's also being happy. And I think that's what kind of keeps it going.
Have you always had that attitude?
No, absolutely not. I mean, obviously I think that comes with maturity, with age, with being a father, with being a husband, that comes with a lot of things. That comes with how to when navigating, situations like COVID or situations where, businesses aren't doing well financially or just anything that life throws at you. I think a combination of so many different things kind of creates this behavior and this nature. For me, I feel like the most important place that everybody needs to kind of be and grow from is from the dirt, from the bottom, right? Because you can't be the person that you're destined to be without having to learn a lot of life lessons.
It's so hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
So hard. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur as well, and I just want to cry sometimes. Like even in this moment, I'm having a day where there's a part of me that feels a little bit like a failure. And I'm just going to be honest because I want people relate to that.
100%.
It doesn't mean I'm a failure because I can challenge my thoughts. I can differentiate the true from the false. And I can also ask friends like you, like, hey, how do I get through these moments where a project is not going a certain way or a project is not going the way that I anticipated or expected it to go? And right now I feel like I'm in that place of something specific, of just a project. So it's disappointing at times. And I feel like half the battle of of entrepreneurship is learning how to go forward after disappointment and just keep going. I mean, you're the one that gave me that that picture of the fork.
Yeah.
Go into that.
Well, I mean, look, I think we've had this conversation in the past where you definitely have to leave room for disappointment, and you definitely have to leave room for sorrow and regret, and because those are natural feelings, and those are feelings that if used properly can help fuel you into a different direction or better what you're currently doing. I mean, I can't tell you how many countless of times I've made decisions, business decisions or life decisions that didn't pan out, and they probably brought my business further back than they did forward, right? I think it's about learning from that, giving it the space to kind of live in your mind, and it helps you kind of grow in the future. And it's just like it's like a data bank, right? Where in the future, where something similar situation comes up, you can go back there, pull that info, how you handled it, what you learned from that, and overcome that situation faster than you did at that point, right? And so it takes a lot of resiliency, honestly. It's super exhausting, it's very tiring, it's not an easy road. That's why I think that it's super important for you to love and have passion in what you do, because that's the thing that's going to keep you going.
Is the thing that you love to do create? Do you love creating?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an idea person. I like coming up with a lot of ideas. Doesn't mean that I follow through with 90% of them. Because and follow through and implementation is the hardest piece. But I think that if I'm constantly trying to innovate and come up with new ideas, eventually one of them is just going to click and it's just going to work, right? I'll give you an example. Obviously, we have various different programs, and from outpatient to residential to detox to therapy to all these different things, and they're all intertwined, but they're all separate. And so coming up with an idea of opening up AM healthcare was a way to bridge all of these programs so that they operate in a cohesive manner, but at the same time are separate and individualized in their own way. And so structuring AM Health and structuring it from a financial standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from a branding and marketing standpoint, it was difficult, but it was an idea that I came up with by having conversations with somebody randomly, and boom, all of a sudden, all these thoughts started coming in my mind. I could do this, I could do that, and it can bring everything together, and it could be one piece instead of being separate, right? Because I opened up all of these individual locations with, various partners and different circumstances and situations, and I kind of gave room and openness to do that. But now, because they're all interrelated, my goal was how can I bring them all together where they're working as one unit. And so that's been a huge overhaul for me in the past year, and bringing on personnel and all that kind of stuff. So, it's to answer your question, it's time. Time is the only cure and solution for a problem you have in the moment. If you give it the time and you keep putting in the work, it'll eventually resolve itself.
That is so profound. Time. It's not complicated. Just give yourself the time.
The time. It is what it is. Look, in the end of the day, if you love what you do and you're passionate and you believe in what you're doing, time will solve it all.
Do you feel like you have to detach your worth from a project?
Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that?
I feel like if people are attaching their self-worth to the outcome of a project,
okay,
you're setting yourself up for failure, because I feel like the outcomes are always changing.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that your self-worth goes up and down like a yo-yo. And I know I've had to and continue to have to learn to not do that my worth is not defined by the money that's in my account. Although I love money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you haven't always had this amount of money.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that part of it is ego and just saying, regardless of whatever outcome, I still think I'm the shit. You know,
Not
and
everyone is that ego or is that confidence?
that could be a mixture
Is
of both, right?
right.
I think that like the humble side of me thinks it's ego, right? Because I want to admit that I have an ego. But at the same time, I agree with you. Like I have a friend of mine from middle school who always had that type of mentality. It was so funny. And because when I was in high school, I honestly remember telling him like, you have a huge ego. And he responded like, no, I'm just really confident. I swear to God, it just popped into my head. And I'm like, so yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I think it's not just one or the other.
Well, I feel like ego gets a really bad rap, but
Yeah.
I also think it's really important to have a healthy ego.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, if you look at all the most successful people in the world, anybody, they all have an ego. Most people hate them for it. You know, you look at Michael Jordan, look at Kobe Bryant. I mean, look at Elon Musk, look at Jeff Bezos, look at Bill Gates, look at Warren Buffett. I don't care what you say about any one of them and what they do. They're amazing at their craft. And a lot of it is because they have a tremendous amount of confidence in themselves and their beliefs. Might be wrong, might be right. That's an opinion that's going to be different between everybody. But in the end of the day, they have such a drive and they have such a belief in what they're promoting and selling in themselves and in their products and in their organizations and in their specialties that it's apparent. And so I think ego is healthy. I think ego that can be used to harm people is not healthy. But I feel like if it's something that's used to grow and promote and especially in our field, because we're in the field of helping people, right? So sometimes ego can actually, you know, go the opposite direction and it can actually harm people. So I think it's very important to make sure you stay humble with that ego.
How do you stay humble?
Again, just being in a position where I, first of all, you know, come from a family of hardworking individuals. Both my parents are immigrants from the USSR. And so them coming to a country with absolutely nothing, barely speaking the language. I mean, my father was an extremely hard worker. My mom was an amazing mom and a hard worker herself. My grandfather came here with nothing, opened up businesses. And so being a first generation born, I was fortunate enough to retain a lot of that that belief system and that drive and again the humble nature and knowing where you come from and where you know what you have when you don't have it, which I'm trying to instill hopefully in my daughter. And because she's now second generation, she's going to be growing up with things that, you know, I didn't have to or my parents didn't. And so I think that there's a part of that. I think failure is a great way to humble you. And in moments where you feel like you're being defeated, it does bring you back down to a level. You know, that's, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, yeah.
Just the idea of failure is always such an interesting subject for me because there's so many ways to look at it, because every mistake, every quote unquote failure I've had has always led me to the next best thing. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite quotes is, failure is the opportunity to begin again more intelligently. Mm. So I like the word defeated because the word failure just seems so defined and it's so weighted. Like, do you really believe it's failure? Do you feel like it's defeat? Do you feel like...
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, failure is like a finite thing. Like you fail, that's it, it's done, right? Defeat is like in the moment, like you've been defeated, but doesn't necessarily mean you can't come back and win again.
That helped me so much.
Right.
That really helped me so much. It's defeat, it's not failure.
Right, 100%. I agree with that. Again, it's about your mindset, right? I mean, again, I think that like in your particular situation, I don't see that as defeat or failure. I think it's just a stepping stone and something that you have to learn and grow around, you know, like anything else, right? So I feel like it's just an opportunity for you to change and maneuver. And the fact that you are motivated and inspiring and inspired, you have the ability to do that. And you just got to fucking do it.
Just got to fucking do it. I really feel like that's just half the battle.
Yeah.
Is you just got to fucking do it.
Just got to do it. Yeah.
So you have a very big life, though. You're a dad, you're a husband, you're a business owner, 7 businesses, and I see you at work. You're heavily involved in everything that's going on.
Yeah.
do you feel like you have to be in control of everything all the time for things to work?
For a very long time, I felt like I had to, for sure. I felt, I definitely have, control freak characteristics. I think because of time and feeling that burnout feeling, doesn't mean that I've burnt out, but it's there and it's looming there, and I'm aware that it's there, and I feel that it's also not sustainable, right? Because as you grow, there's more expectation, there's more moving parts, there's a lot more, there's a lot of variables at this point. And so when you have, a company or two companies, I mean, again, just it also depends on the size of them and whatnot, but it's something that's manageable. You can take on the headache and you can take on the risks and you can take on all of these things. But I'm in a position now where, there's just so much that it becomes too much to manage. And so one of the bigger pushes of this year was hiring and finding key personnel to manage the things that I've been managing for so long. So we hired several months ago a human resources director. I mean, for the past 8 years, I've been doing payroll. I've been the hiring process, sending documentation. I mean, dealing with all these things. And again, it's sometimes you got to do the dirty work for the thing you love most, right? Even if you don't want to do it, it's a necessity. I feel like at this point, because it's become so large and there's so many things, I don't do enough justice for that department by handling it myself. And I'm underserving the people that work with me. And so I had to hire, right? Or a director of business development, right? So, for all these years, I've been handling all the marketing and the business development, and I still do. But I feel that I'm underserving our organizations by taking it all on myself. And so it's not just not great for me, it's also not great for my businesses. It's not great for the people that work for these organizations. It's my duty to put in people in place that can help this sustainably grow.
That is so interesting. And I'm curious what your process is organizing the systems. Like, do you have a routine every day? And I know you don't. I already knew the answer to that question, which is why you fascinate me, because you're not the typical business owner that does everything very strategically. So how and you've really maintained a lot of success in your approach, but how do you deal with all of these different businesses, all of the different people, without having a system in place where you're looking at everything every day? I mean, what is your way of doing it?
I honestly have no idea. I really don't know. I don't have a system in place. It just again, it's as things come up, they just get taken care of. Obviously,
it sounds like it's very intuitive.
I mean, I think it's just being aware, and it because I am involved, I do see everything that happens, and my interest is to always make things better and more efficient, and so. It's interesting. It's like this theory. You never force things to happen. They happen as they should happen, right? It's like you can create. I mean, at least for me, I'm not the kind of person that implement, follow through, boom, 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 yada, yada, right? I'm going to come up with all these ideas, and this is how I'm going to handle it within the next 6 months. Like, I do have a goal sheet. I do have, like, long-term goals, short-term goals.
So you have that.
I do have that as a reference that I probably never refer back to. But in the moment where I was like, oh, I should have this. And I enter it in, and then I just never refer back to it.
Do you feel?
But it's there.
Right. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Do you feel like your goal is targeting an emotional experience?
In what sense?
Like, if you achieve a certain amount of success, you'll have emotional freedom.
No, I don't think I have a level that I want to get to. And I think we've talked about this before. I think when you create ceilings for yourself and limitations, because even if there is that ultimate goal, why can't we push it even further, right? So what's stopping us from there? So again, and you'll talk to different various coaches and they're all going to tell you, create a goal, work on, and I agree with that. Everybody learns differently, everybody retains information differently, everybody processes differently. For me personally, I'm just going with the flow, and I'm giving the space for ideas to come in. And like I said, 90% of those ideas fall through. But I think that as long as I continue to follow up and push forward and try to implement as much as possible, even if one or two of those do come through, over time, you'll have an overall package put together, right? And so when I say give it time, it took me from our first program to our second program, it took like 4 or 5 years. From our second program to our third program, it took me a year. From our third program to our seventh program, it took me about a year and a half.
So when you weren't seeing the results you wanted overnight, over 1 month, over 3 months, over 6 months, what was pushing you to keep going?
I was okay with it. I felt like if it wasn't going to work out, it was naturally just going to tail off. This is naturally just going to go away, or I'm just naturally going to say, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm not interested anymore. I'm going to move on. I have a very short, interest span. So if something doesn't interest me, I'm kind of easy pretty quickly. Like, okay, let's just move on.
What maintains your interest in things?
Look, at this point, for me, it's not the money. It's not, listen, everybody loves money. If you say you don't love money, you're lying to yourself. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves to have it. Everybody loves to be able to spend it. All these wonderful things, right? But for me, at this point, it's not about money. It's more of the challenge. It's the excitement of coming up with ideas. It's that thrill that when an idea works and you can see it working and it's like, damn, like that was awesome. And that was exciting. That's what excites me. That's what keeps me going. And also the fact that I love with the people that I work with. I was in an industry before this that I wasn't really excited. It was exciting, but it eventually tailed off, and I just wasn't interested anymore. And the people that I work with weren't interesting. And so at that point, again, I'm very quick to cut things. At that point, I sold the company and moved on. I had no interest in trying to push something that I felt that didn't need to be pushed. I think it's really difficult a lot of times for people to let go because they're afraid that will consider themselves as a failure if they do. And it's okay. It's okay to let go, and it's okay to move on from things. It's not a deterrent. It's more of a release of your shackles so you can move on to the next thing that can actually make you happy.
Whoa. It's a release of your shackles so that you can move on to the next thing that makes you happy.
Yeah.
That's deep.
100%. I mean, I know so many people in my personal life that either can't start things or let go of things because they've put so much into it. And if they feel like they do let it go, they're going to consider themselves a failure. And, and I've had that with not only with businesses and stuff, but with employees. And, it's like we've hired this person. We're super excited about them. We put so much energy and effort into them. We had so many hopes. It's been 6 months. It's not working out. It's time to move on. There have been people in leadership positions that have been afraid to move on from that individual. And I say, well, no, this is a great learning experience for us of how to work with people in these types of situations. What did we take out of this relationship? What did we take out of this experience that we can use later on? So even if something didn't work, like I was telling a friend of mine, like he has a business that, it's where it's at right now, and he's afraid of parting ways. And I'm like, and he considers himself a failure if he would have closed it down. I'm like, that's not a failure. You've had so much success within this period, and everything you've learned, nobody can take that away from you. You're going to use that on your next venture, and you're going to know exactly what you need to do to be successful. And so that's kind of my approach with things and the way that I look at just life in general, honestly.
As a leader, it sounds like you approach any situation, or you've learned to approach every situation as, how can I learn from this? And how can this better me or my team at some point?
Mm-hmm. And that's the humbling factor of having an ego as well, is it being willing to accept defeat, albeit short period of time, but defeat nonetheless, and say that, yeah, this knocked me out.
It's so hard. Like, I grew up in a family where I heard this line all the time: defeat does not exist in this dojo, does it?
Yeah.
And it's like, so I've been taught to not accept defeat. And I'm curious, like, how do you know? And I think this is really important for business people out there to know, or anybody. I mean, this could be considered in relationships, romantic. This could be considered in friendships, businesses, whatever you're going through. Like, how do you know when to stop? How do you know when to stop and go on to the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's an equation to this, honestly.
And I like how you always respond. Like, you're like, it's everything's different.
No, everything is different. Everybody's different. I don't think there's like you need to do this and like that's why, nothing against coaches, but sometimes there's a lot of coaches out there that are like do A, B, C, and D and E, and you're gonna get what you need to get, right? And so I don't think it's that simple. I think everybody is different. Everybody retains information differently. Everybody has their own personal beliefs about themselves and who they are. They come with their own traumas, their own ways of being raised in a household, all of these things. So I don't think there's a set mentality. I think you just kind of go with the flow. I mean, honestly, the most important thing in my opinion is your ability to listen. And it's not just necessarily listen to people from the outside or the voices from the outside. It's about listening to yourself and listening to your gut and accepting what your gut is telling you and moving forward with that. Because that's what I said. That's what, I'm not going to go into the specifics of the gut and where that phrase comes from, but there's actually something to it where your gut will tell you when you should be in fear, when you should be excited. It's not your brain. It's necessarily, it starts from your gut. That's why they have that saying, the gut feeling. This will tell you what you need to know. This will tell you what you want to hear in that moment. And so you have made the decision of where you want to go and what you want to do within 10 seconds of thinking about it. Now your brain is so complicated that it's going to try to convince you to do what you think is best in that moment. And it could be right or it could be wrong. But you've already made the decision of what. So, I mean, whether to cut ties, whether to get into a relationship, whether to get out of a relationship, what you need to do. We're just so simple in a lot of ways that we overcomplicate, a situation and we make it difficult. I consider myself a very impulsive human being. So whenever things are brought to me, I'm a yes, no. I'm not a reflect, let me think about it, let me process it, and I'll get back to you. I make decisions very, very, very quickly in my mind. And I can have 3 million different decisions at any given point. Not all of them are going to be the right decision. I think it's also combined with the willingness to accept that I've made the wrong decision and adjust. That helps me.
I like that, adjusting.
Exactly. And so, but being able to make decisions on the fly and go, and just being okay with that, if you do that more often than not, you're going to win in the end. Because you even if you're faced with a negative outcome of a decision, if you're quick to adjust, you're eventually going to get to the yes and to the right answer.
That's huge. So it's being willing to adjust to any circumstance.
Yeah.
And being able to own your mistakes.
100%.
Being able to own when you're wrong.
100%.
And taking responsibility for it.
100%.
And telling people, hey, I was wrong about this. This is what I learned from it.
100%.
I think that's huge because, one, I don't think a lot of people know how to take responsibility. They don't want to admit when they're wrong because, again, we're driven so much by this fear of failure, quote unquote failure, because I think so many people in America we're trying to create this American dream, and anything other than that is a failure. So it can be a little exhausting. And I also think that what you're saying is so valid. It's like, no, own your mistake and now let's move on to the next best thing. Mm-hmm. And whatever happens, it's going to lead you to the next best thing. So you can't really fail. And that leads me to want to ask you about your story on how you started, because it's actually very similar to how I started. Because when I started my company 5 years ago, my company Transformational Solutions had to plug that in there. Plug it. I went through a pregnancy discrimination, and I lost my job, and I was pregnant, and I was terrified. I didn't have any money in the bank, and I was about to have a baby in 9 months. And so I started driving Uber. Isn't that interesting?
That's crazy.
And then I started my business. But didn't you go through something similar?
I did. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I didn't know that you drove Uber.
I did. I was I think I drove Uber till I was like 5 months pregnant. It was
Wow.
really overwhelming, honestly. I
Wow.
would have strangers just touch
Yeah.
my belly.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they would
Wow.
just be in the front seat and back seat. One of them was in the front seat with me and just started touching my belly as I'm driving. And sometimes I don't realize what I've gone through until later, and I tell the
Yeah.
story like on a podcast with you,
Unbelievable.
and it's scary.
It
And
is,
but
yeah.
I had to do what I had to do what I had to do.
That's unbelievable. Wow. Yeah. So we we opened up our first program, and it was kind of surviving at that point for a couple of years, because we really didn't know necessarily what we were doing. We were kind of just figuring things out, and long story short, we got to a point. My wife was pregnant. We had a mortgage. We had, just a lot going on. I think I had like $500 in my bank account, and I was sitting on the couch, and I started crying, and I started getting super nervous because I didn't know like what was, and I really wasn't earning an income at that point that was anywhere close to where it needed to be. And I told my wife, like, I'm probably just gonna go start driving Uber, and I even started looking at like grocery stores and like bagging jobs just at night type of stuff. And it was a really scary moment because, again, I've never kind of been in that position before, and I had this moment when my daughter was born. She's my everything. But when my daughter was born, something clicked in my head, and I remember I was in Vegas for a conference, and just shit was popping off. Like, we had the wrong employees, we had the wrong system, everything was wrong. It was just wrong. And I got a call, and without going into details, it just was the tipping point where everything wrong just became even worse. And I got off the phone after a really heated phone call, and I'm at the poker table, and I just remember just saying, just fuck this shit. It's like, I'm coming back and just plowing through everything. And I don't care what gets in my way. At this point, I have nothing to lose. And like, I'm getting chills because I distinctly, it's like, when you have like a trauma, or like that feeling in that moment at that time. And I had that, and I came home, and just something grew in my head, and nobody could get in my way. And I literally changed everything. Our directors, our this, our that, our billing, our literally everything. And I think at that point, and I use, I say my daughter, when you become a parent, and I'm speaking for myself, something clicks in you, and it's that selfish belief gets wiped out, because now it's no longer about me, it's about my child. And at that point, it's I need to do this because of this person, not because I'm greedy and I want this for myself. I'm doing it because now it's survival mode. More so, right, than even if you don't have a kid. I don't know what it is. Like, I can't explain it well enough. And so I distinctly know that was the period in my life where everything changed. And at that point, just kind of don't look back at it too much. I obviously remember it and this and that, but not, so yeah.
How do you balance work life, family life?
That's very hard. It's honestly very hard. I love to travel with my wife and my daughter. I think traveling is important. I definitely on my phone a lot. I'm definitely doing a lot of stuff at work, even when I'm home. And sometimes my daughter reminds me, like, Daddy, get off the phone. Come play with me. And sometimes I pay attention. Sometimes I don't. And I go to sleep regretting it. And I go to sleep and saying, like, wow, I'm such an idiot.
Ugh, I go through the same thing.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
It's very, very hard. And it's about being honest and having conversation and being, I have an amazing wife who we've been together for a very long time, and we know how to communicate well with one another, and we're not afraid of calling each other out.
You guys have been together 18,000 years.
18,000 years, exactly. And so, having open and honest conversations, and I do reflect on the decisions that I made. My wife always says one of the reasons why we're still together is because you can say sorry very, very quickly. And so I know when I screw up, and I know when I'm not doing the right thing. And I'm actually, that I will have an ego about. I'm pretty good about that. And so I like to correct in the moment as quickly as possible so it doesn't dwell too long.
That's incredible. So you and Anna have seen each other grow like from the ground up. That's just so impressive and beautiful. Yeah. It's such a beautiful story. And I agree with you. It's very hard as a parent to be fully present sometimes with your kids. I mean, it's my mission to eradicate this idea that we can't have balance. I'm on a mission to prove that we can have balance. If I want to be a successful entrepreneur, I can also be a successful mother. It's just learning when to put the phone down, learning when to say no, learning when to not answer the phone call, learning you're not going to die if you don't answer this phone call, and learning how to not be codependent. And I think it's also learning to, which you said earlier, trust your staff and to help empower your staff to do their job, that you don't have to do everything. And I go through the same thing. I've always kind of had this mentality, well, no one has my drive. No one has my athletic, I'm going to kill this until I win, right?
Nobody's going to care about your business more than you do.
Right. And then I think there's times there's like, well, so what? I'm still going to let this go and be utterly present with my kid, because something I learned was that when our children say, come play with me, like that's their love language.
100%. And we recently went out of town for a week, and it was the first time in 8 years I forwarded my phone calls.
Wow.
And I put my phone in the safe. I did check it at nights, but literally spent 6 to 7 hours a day, every day, with my daughter in the pool.
I want to cry. What was that like?
It was amazing. And we bonded so well. I mean, She comes up to me, like, Daddy, you're always so much fun to play with. And so, like, that, for me, that's everything.
Well, I feel like when I asked you earlier, are you looking for that emotional freedom? That's what I meant. Are you looking to work this hard so that you can have that freedom to go on vacation and have those moments of bliss with your daughter in the water?
No, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, look, I don't think you have to be successful or defined, again, by money or whatever you've done to have time and emotional freedom with your family. I think there's people that have that emotional freedom and don't have the businesses and don't have the financial resources necessarily, right, the same, and they're happy or happier, right? And so I don't do that for that. I think, like you said, I think it's a balance of the both. I do this because I love what I do. I love creating ideas. I love working with people. I love seeing growth. I love to do all that, and I love my family. I think they're separate, and I think they're together, and it's constantly a mixture of the both. And so, like, I'm not doing this so I can say, oh, well, I retire when I'm 45. Like, I'm gonna be working until I'm 90. Like, I already know that, just because, again, I love what I do. I mean, my grandfather was the same. Both my grandfathers were the same way. Someone had to tell him, like, you can't work anymore. Like, stay home, right? Because they would have just kept going. And a lot of it is also survival mode, and that's the mentality they have. But, my father's the same way. He's going to work until he's 130. But, again, it's easy when you love what you do. So.
And you have purpose. It makes you want to get out of bed. I think that's why most people struggle with depression.
Yeah.
Is they don't have purpose. And I've talked a lot about this on many other podcasts, but there was this famous psychologist, Erik Erikson, who talked about the phases of development. And from the age of 18 to like 65, or maybe in your family's case, it's 18 to 120. Right. We have a need to contribute to the world. We have this deep innate need to develop into a sense of purpose and to give back to the world. And so I do feel like our jobs, or whatever you're doing, whether it's working, volunteer, it doesn't matter, but you're doing something that contributes to helping helping people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. For me, it is the passion, and again, I mentioned this earlier. I didn't choose to be in this industry. I didn't choose to be in healthcare. I didn't say I'm gonna work in the healthcare field. I graduated with finance, and I worked in construction for quite a long time. I fell into it, and the passion keeps me in it, and so for me, I do have that innate need to be of help to people, and so and I constantly have this. Because we are working in the recovery world, and people are constantly asking, are you in recovery? Are you in recovery? And I'm not in recovery. I mean, obviously I struggle with my own mental health issues and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not in recovery.
Well, and I challenge that though, because I really want to break that. I don't think recovery just means to be recovering from substances.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that, like, I'm met with that, and I feel like that's part in this industry, not all people, but people, that if you can only be defined by that to be able to help others.
Totally.
And I'm like, no, I mean, I want to help people just because I'm a human being and I just want to help people. I don't need to necessarily gone through step by step what you're going through to understand or be empathetic to your situation and be of help. And so anyways, it's just a side note. But
no, and I think that's most people who work in the field of mental health and substance abuse usually do that because they have their own story of substance abuse issues, and you don't. And that's why I think it's really cool. And it's inspiring, because a lot of the times people in this world that work in this field who end up making a lot of money through their businesses, they lose their morale and they lose their desire to help people because they become so money hungry, and they got a taste of fame, or they got a taste of financial wealth, and they got a taste of feeling important, so they lost that drive to help people. And I have yet to see that with you. I don't see that with you, and that's what makes your work environment so easy to show up for, because it's like, they talk about it's like the person at the top, like it trickles down. So if you're someone at the top who's just in this for the money and you don't give a fuck about helping people, your staff's not going to want to show up for you. You have to show your staff that you care about them, that you care about the product or the service that you are promoting, and you do. So thank you. I think you're the best. How do you relax? It's a good question, right? I find myself as an entrepreneur, I'm pretty disciplined about this. So I'm grateful for that, because if I'm not disciplined about this, I can't be a good mother and I can't be a good entrepreneur. For me personally, I have a morning routine. But also I think we've talked about this and related, like I fully relax or escape with binge watching Netflix or binge watching television. That's one of the only things where my brain is off, and that's how I relax.
Yeah. My form of relaxation is I like bargain hunting, deal hunting for sports cards, and collecting sports cards.
The way you say it, it's like it's something like you should be embarrassed about it. It's not. It's so fucking cool.
No. Legos.
I
love building Legos.
Starship Legos.
No,
not
Star
Starship,
Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars Legos.
I remember we played tennis one time, and then you were like, "Can I show you something back in the back of my car?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You bring out like your Star Wars.
That started
Legos.
off as a really creepy statement.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that you followed
true.
up with the Star Wars box.
Show a dead body. I'm kidding.
Yeah. And then like you said, I mean, I obviously playing with my kid, but that can be stressful too. Watching TV, my mind moves in a million different directions at once, and so anytime I can do something that's like numbing, where I can just relax the mind and just focus on one individual thing, that's huge for me. So that's why Legos are huge for me, because I can just focus on the instructions and the build of it. And researching baseball cards and basketball cards is just very and TV as well.
And sports.
Yeah, sports as well, of course. Yeah.
So if you could give yourself a piece of advice, 15 years ago, Arthur Mogilevski,
Rachel.
If you could talk to that young man and give him a piece of advice, what would you say? I get emotional. If someone asks me that, I'm like, I know I'm gonna cry. I'd be like,
I'll ask you that.
Don't do drugs, Rachel.
Yeah, well, that's a good one.
Yeah. Or just get help, Rachel. Which I did. I went to rehab.
Let me know when you're done.
I'm done.
Okay.
Anyway, I could keep talking if you want me to.
Honestly, it's something that I'm still kind of trying to learn and teach myself. It's something that I would love to incorporate as part of my DNA, and that's being patient. And I've definitely grown to be more patient than I was. I was, as anxious and as fast as I am now. I used to be much worse than that, where, I just needed things immediately, and I just wasn't patient, and I was impulsive, but impulsive in the wrong ways a lot of times. And I just didn't give things time, and I'm still learning that. I'm still absolutely learning that. So I think patience would be probably the most important lesson I can give myself at a younger age. So
That's a good one.
yeah.
And also it's hard because to teach patience, you have to have experience to see how patience is valuable. So it's not something you learn overnight. I can't tell you like, Arthur, be patient now. Something I tell my kid a lot is, Jackson, this is a really good opportunity to practice patience, and this is how you practice it. You breathe in and out of your mouth. You might feel frustrated, but you have to look for the opportunities to be patient.
Well, for me, I think it's case in point. I learned through patience through experience.
Right.
And like you were saying, like I told myself I am going to primarily do business with professionals in the union world or in large companies. It took me 4 years to break through.
Wow.
And so for me, and again, being the kind of person like I want it now, like the proof was in the pudding that the patience paid off for me. Even though in the moment I might not have realized it, now I reflect back, I'm like thank God I was that. And sometimes I get it. Some people don't have the ability to be that patient, right? Because they need it now to survive, whatever, I understand, right? But for me, it's like that's why I wish I knew that beforehand, so I wouldn't feel so anxious through the process. Because a lot of times the things that I wanted to come to fruition were out of my control, and because I am a control freak and I couldn't control it, I had to force myself to wait and to watch and to be patient. And so now I'm trying to make that as like, if I do something, I'm like, it's going to take 6 months. It's going to take a year. It is what it is, And so like I'm at that place right now in my life. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's you have to give yourself the experience to practice and see how patience benefits you, and to see its value. And so 100%. Ultimately you have to take a risk. And be present to the moment where you go, hey, yeah, this is a moment I can practice being patient. I feel uncomfortable. I just want to pull my hair out. And yet I'm still going to just practice breathing.
Just keep doing it.
And just trust the process.
Exactly.
Wow. What a good interview. So much fun. Well, thank you, Marco.
Mogilevski, Rachel.
I don't know why I can never say.
It's Arthur.
Martha, Markle, Arthur, Mogilevski. Mogilevski. Thank you so much for this wonderful interview. I love doing this podcast with you, and I know everyone else loves it too. I appreciate all of the feedback that we're getting from the show. Again, please go to Got Mental Health on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and rate, review, and follow. And we look forward to hearing from you next week.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate the great conversation.
Thanks, Arthur. Bye.